My name is Alexandra Mitchell, and for 7 years, my family has been systematically stealing from me while convincing themselves I owe them everything. The myth they believe. When my grandmother died, she left me a trust fund worth $2 million. I'm sitting on this fortune, living modestly while refusing to help my struggling family. The reality: there is no trust fund. There never was. What my grandmother left me was $40,000 when I was 23. I invested it wisely, built a successful career, and turned it into $3.2 million through hard work and smart financial decisions. But my family doesn't know that. They invented the trust fund story to explain how I could afford my lifestyle, and over the years, they've convinced themselves it's real. What they also don't know, while telling themselves I'm selfish for not sharing my trust fund, they've been draining my actual bank accounts. Credit cards opened in my name, $247,000 in fraudulent charges. Personal loans taken out with my information, $186,000. Unauthorized wire transfers from my brokerage account, $115,000. Forged checks, $90,000. Total embezzled over 7 years, $638,000. I discovered the theft 6 months ago when my financial advisor flagged unusual activity. I hired a private investigator who spent 4 months documenting everything. Every forged signature, every fraudulent account, every theft. And I've been waiting for the right moment to reveal what I know. That moment came at Sunday dinner when my father demanded I hand over my trust fund to help the family. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, in a family that valued appearances above all else. My father, Robert Mitchell, worked in finance, or claimed to. In reality, he'd been fired from 3 different firms for poor performance but told everyone he was consulting independently. My mother, Catherine, didn't work but spent money like she earned a 7-figure salary. Designer clothes, expensive lunches, country club memberships we couldn't afford. My older brother Marcus was the golden child. Handsome, charming, perpetually unemployed but always between opportunities, or launching a startup. They lived beyond their means my entire childhood. We had a big house with a mortgage they struggled to pay. We drove luxury cars that were always one missed payment from repossession. We belonged to clubs where Dad would smile and network while his credit cards were declined. I learned early that in our family, looking successful was more important than being successful. By high school, I decided to be different. I worked part-time jobs. I saved aggressively. I got scholarships to Northwestern. I studied finance and graduated with honors. My first job out of college was at Goldman Sachs as an analyst, making $85,000 a year. I lived in a tiny apartment in Queens, brought lunch from home and saved 60% of my income. My family was embarrassed by me. "You're making good money now," Mom would say. "Why are you still living like a college student? What will people think?" "I'm building wealth," I'd explain. "You sound like a miser," Dad would reply. When Grandma Helen, my mother's mother, died when I was 23, she left me $40,000. Not millions. $40,000. I invested it in a diversified portfolio of index funds and individual stocks I'd researched. Over the next 9 years, through compound growth and additional contributions from my salary, I turned that $40,000 into $680,000. By age 27, I was promoted to vice president at Goldman with a salary of $185,000 plus bonuses. I bought my first investment property. I maxed out my 401k. I lived below my means and invested the difference. By age 30, I left Goldman to start my own investment advisory firm, Mitchell Capital Management. My first year, I managed $12 million in assets for 5 high-net-worth clients. By year 3, I managed $89 million for 18 clients. My personal net worth hit $3.2 million by age 32, my current age. But my family didn't know any of this. They saw me living in a nice but not extravagant apartment, driving a sensible car, wearing professional but not flashy clothes. And they invented an explanation: the trust fund. "Grandma must have left Alex a fortune," I overheard Mom telling Aunt Susan at a family gathering. "How else could she afford that apartment?" "Catherine, your mother's estate was barely $200,000 total, split between you and your sister," Aunt Susan had replied. "No, there must have been a separate trust for Alex. That's the only thing that makes sense." The lie evolved over time. At first, it was maybe $500,000. then $1 million. By last year, they'd convinced themselves Grandma had left me $2 million in a trust fund I was selfishly hoarding. And as their financial situation deteriorated, Dad's consulting generated almost no income, Mom's spending never slowed, Marcus couldn't hold a job, they started to resent my trust fund more and more. While we struggle, Alex sits on millions, Dad would mutter. What they didn't know. While they were inventing my trust fund, they were stealing my actual money. While my family was creating fantasy fortunes I didn't have, I was building a real business they couldn't imagine. Mitchell Capital Management started small. My first client was a former Goldman colleague who'd sold his startup for $18 million. He trusted me to manage $5 million of it. I focused on value investing, finding undervalued companies with strong fundamentals and holding them long-term. Boring. Steady. Profitable. My returns in year 1, 24% when the S&P 500 returned 16%. Word spread. I added 4 more clients. Then 6. Then 18. By year 3, I was managing $89 million and generating $890,000 in annual fees. My personal income that year, $420,000 after expenses and salaries for my 2 employees. But I still lived modestly. Still drove my Toyota. Still wore suits from Banana Republic instead of Chanel. Not because I couldn't afford better. Because I'd learned that wealth isn't about showing off. It's about financial security and freedom. At family dinners, the comparisons were constant. Alex, when are you going to buy a real apartment? Mom would ask. Something in Manhattan, something impressive. I like my apartment. But you have that trust fund. You should be living better. There is no trust fund, Mom. Don't be modest, honey. We know Grandma left you money. It became a family mythology. An explanation for why I didn't need their help, why I didn't flaunt wealth, why I was different. And the more they believed in the trust fund, the more entitled they felt to it. Family shares wealth, Dad would say. When one of us has resources, we help the others. I help when I can, I'd reply, thinking of the countless dinners I'd paid for, the loans to Marcus that were never repaid, the emergency funds I'd given Mom. But you're not really helping, Marcus would say. You have millions. We need thousands. You're being selfish. 6 months ago, everything changed. My financial advisor, Richard Wong, called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Alex, we need to meet. Something's wrong with your accounts. We met that evening. Richard pulled up statements. Your brokerage account shows 3 wire transfers totaling $115,000 over the past 18 months. Did you authorize these? No. And there are charges on a credit card in your name that I don't recognize. A Capital One card. Did you open that? I don't have a Capital One card. We spent the next 3 hours going through my finances. What we found was systematic, organized theft. I hired Marcus Chin, a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud and identity theft. I need you to trace where the money went and who took it. Marcus worked for 4 months. What he found was damning. The credit cards had been opened using my social security number and forged signatures. The statements went to my parents' address in Greenwich. They'd listed themselves as secondary contacts while I was traveling for work. The personal loans had been taken out by my brother Marcus, using my information and forged signatures. A notary had falsified documents claiming I'd appeared and authorized the loans. The wire transfers from my brokerage account had been initiated through a series of password resets. Someone had called the brokerage claiming to be me, answered security questions using information only family would know, and authorized transfers to accounts in my father's name. The forged checks were written on an old checking account I'd closed, or thought I'd closed. Someone had kept a checkbook and had been writing checks to themselves for 3 years. Every single instance traced back to my family. Marcus Chin presented me with a thick folder of evidence. Ms. Mitchell, this is systematic embezzlement. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Forgery. These are federal crimes. How much total? $638,000 over 7 years. Most of it in the past 3 years. I sat in my office staring at the documentation. My family had stolen $638,000 from me while complaining I was selfish for not sharing my trust fund. What do you want to do? Marcus asked. I want to document everything. Every transaction. Every forged signature. Every crime. And then I want to wait for the right moment. What's the right moment? When they push too far. The Sunday dinner was at my parents' house in Greenwich. A monthly tradition I'd maintained despite everything. I arrived at 6 o'clock carrying wine and flowers. Mom greeted me with air kisses. Dad was in his study. Marcus was already at the dining table looking at his phone. Alex. Mom ushered me in. We need to talk to you about something important tonight. Okay. Dinner was served at 7. Roast chicken, potatoes, vegetables. Mom's standard menu that she had catered but claimed to have cooked herself. We made small talk through the appetizer course. Weather, politics, mutual acquaintances. Then Dad cleared his throat. Alexandra, your mother and I have been discussing something and we need to address it. I set down my fork. What's that? Your grandmother's trust fund. There is no trust fund, Dad. Don't be coy, Alex. We know Grandma left you approximately $2 million. We've known for years. That's not true. Let me finish, Dad interrupted. We've been patient. We've let you manage that money as you see fit. But the family is facing a crisis and we need your help. Marcus jumped in. Mom and Dad are behind on their mortgage. I have a business opportunity that needs capital. We've done the math. If you contribute $500,000 from your trust fund, it would solve everyone's problems. There is no trust fund. Mom patted my hand condescendingly. Sweetheart, we understand you want to protect your assets. But family comes first. We need you to do the right thing. The right thing. Hand over your trust fund, Dad said firmly. This family needs it more than you do. You have a good job. You'll be fine. But your mother and I are 62 years old. We're facing financial ruin. You can prevent that. So you want me to give you $500,000. Not give, Mom corrected. Share. Share your inheritance with your family. The inheritance that doesn't exist. Stop lying. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. We know Grandma left you money. We know you're sitting on millions. And we need you to help us. Now. I looked at all three of them. My father, imperious and demanding. My mother, syrupy, sweet and manipulative. My brother, entitled and aggressive. 7 years of theft. $638,000 stolen. And now they wanted more. I reached for my briefcase, the one I'd deliberately brought tonight. You want to talk about money? I said calmly. Let's talk about money. I opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Marcus Chen's investigation report. There is no trust fund, I said, placing the folder on the dining table. Grandma left me $40,000 when I was 23. I invested it wisely and built a career. Everything I have I earned myself. That's impossible, Dad said. Your apartment, your lifestyle. I make $420,000 a year from my investment advisory firm. I manage $89 million in assets for 18 clients. I've built a net worth of $3.2 million through hard work and smart investing. No trust fund. Just work. The table went silent. But that's not what I wanted to talk about, I continued. I wanted to talk about the $638,000 you've stolen from me over the past 7 years. Mom's face went white. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. Credit card accounts opened in my name with forged signatures. Capital One, Chase, American Express. Total fraudulent charges, $247,000. I placed the statements on the table, highlighting the forged signatures. Personal loans from online lenders. All using my social security number and forged documents. Total, $186,000. More documents on the table. Unauthorized wire transfers from my brokerage account. Someone called the firm pretending to be me, answered security questions using family information, and transferred $115,000 to accounts in your name, Dad. Dad's fork clattered onto his plate. And my personal favorite, forged checks on an account I supposedly closed. $90,000 written to various family members over 3 years. I spread the documents across the dinner table like playing cards. Total embezzlement, $638,000. All documented. All traceable. All prosecutable as federal crimes. The silence was deafening. Then a knock at the front door. Oh, that'll be Marcus, I said, standing up. What? My brother looked confused. Not you, Marcus Chen. The private investigator I hired to document all of this. I walked to the door and let Marcus in. He entered carrying his own briefcase, looking professional and serious. "Good evening," Marcus said to my family. "I'm Marcus Chin, licensed private investigator. I've been working with Ms. Mitchell for the past 4 months to document financial fraud and identity theft." He set his briefcase on the dining table and opened it. "In addition to the financial records Ms. Mitchell has shown you, I have photographic evidence." He pulled out photos. "This is Robert Mitchell at First National Bank in Stamford, presenting himself as Alexandra Mitchell's financial advisor, and requesting a wire transfer." He placed the photo on the table. "My father at a bank counter, caught by security cameras. This is Marcus Mitchell at a check cashing service in Port Chester, cashing a forged check for $12,000. Another photo. My brother, clearly visible. This is Catherine Mitchell meeting with Tony Esposito, a notary public who has since been disbarred for falsifying documents. Mr. Esposito has provided a sworn statement that Mrs. Mitchell paid him $500 to notarize documents claiming Alexandra Mitchell appeared before him, when in fact she did not." Mom looked like she might faint. "I have 37 photographs documenting various instances of fraud," Marcus continued. "I have bank surveillance footage. I have sworn statements from 3 different financial institutions. I have your forged signatures analyzed by a handwriting expert who will testify in court." He pulled out one more document. "And I have this. A criminal complaint I filed with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division 3 days ago. Federal agents are currently reviewing the case for prosecution." Dad found his voice. "You called the FBI on your own family?" "No," I said. "I called the FBI on criminals who happen to be related to me." The dining room erupted. "How dare you?" Mom shrieked. "After everything we've done for you. What have you done for me except steal $638,000? We raised you." Dad shouted. "We gave you everything. You gave me a childhood. I gave myself everything else. And you've been stealing from me for 7 years while demanding I give you more." Marcus, my brother, stood up. "This is insane. You can't actually be pressing charges. We're family. You should have thought about that before you forged my signature on $186,000 in fraudulent loans. I was desperate. I needed the money. Then you should have asked instead of committing federal crimes." Mom was crying now. "Please, Alex. Don't do this. We can pay you back. We'll find a way. You've stolen $638,000 over 7 years. That's $91,000 per year. Where exactly would you get that kind of money to pay me back?" Silence. "That's what I thought." Marcus Chin, the investigator, spoke up. "If I may explain the legal situation. Wire fraud carries up to 20 years in federal prison. Identity theft carries up to 15 years. Bank fraud carries up to 30 years. For the amounts involved here and the systematic nature of the crimes, the U.S. Attorney's Office will likely seek significant prison time for all parties involved." "Prison?" Mom whispered. "Yes, ma'am. Federal prison. Mr. Mitchell, you're looking at 10 to 15 years. Mrs. Mitchell, 5 to 10 years for conspiracy and notary fraud. And Mr. Mitchell Jr., you're looking at 12 to 18 years for the loan fraud and check forgery." My brother's face had gone gray. "Unless," Marcus continued, "Ms. Mitchell decides not to cooperate with the prosecution. In which case the federal case becomes much harder to prove." All 3 of them looked at me. "What do you want?" Dad asked quietly. "I want you to understand what you did to me. For 7 years, you stole from me while telling yourselves I owed you money from a trust fund that didn't exist. You committed federal crimes while calling me selfish. You destroyed my credit, put my accounts at risk, and violated every principle of family trust, all while demanding I give you more." "We understand," Mom said desperately. "We were wrong. We're so sorry. Please don't send us to prison." "Sorry isn't enough. I need accountability." I pulled out another folder. "I've had my attorney prepare a settlement agreement. You will sign over ownership of this house to me to partially cover the theft." "Our house." Dad looked stricken. "It's worth about $680,000 with $320,000 remaining on the mortgage. Signing it over to me gives me $360,000 in equity. That still leaves you owing me $278,000. But where will we live?" That's not my problem. You'll have 30 days to vacate. Alex, please. Second, Marcus will sign a confession to the loan fraud. He'll enter a payment plan to repay his portion. $186,000 over 20 years at 5% interest. That's $1,230 per month. My brother opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. Third, both of you, I looked at my parents, will sign confessions acknowledging the wire fraud, the credit card fraud, the check forgery. You'll enter payment plans for your portions as well. We don't have that kind of money, Dad said weakly. Then you'll get jobs. Both of you. Real jobs. And you'll pay me $2,000 monthly for the next 15 years. We're in our 60s. Plenty of people work in their 60s. You'll figure it out. And if we refuse? Marcus asked. I looked at Marcus Chin, the investigator. If you refuse, he said, Ms. Mitchell proceeds with the federal prosecution. The FBI has everything they need. You'll be arrested within a week. You'll be tried in federal court. And you'll spend the next 10 to 20 years in federal prison. The room was silent except for Mom's quiet sobbing. You have until end of business tomorrow to decide, I said. Sign the agreements and enter the payment plans or face federal prosecution. Your choice. I stood up, gathering my folders. Oh, and one more thing. The trust fund story? Stop telling it. Stop believing it. There never was a trust fund. There was just your daughter working hard and building wealth while you stole from her and called her selfish. I walked to the door. Alex. Dad called. Please. We can talk about this. We're family. We were family, I said. Before you chose to become criminals. I left, Marcus Chin following behind me. They signed the agreements the next morning. My attorney received 3 separate documents by 9 a.m. Confessions, ownership transfer of the house and payment plan agreements. The house transfer was completed within 2 weeks. My parents moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Norwalk. Rent, $2,600 monthly. Dad got a job as a financial advisor at a small firm. Ironic given his history. Mom went back to work for the first time in 30 years, managing a boutique in downtown Greenwich. Their combined income, $95,000 annually. After taxes and rent, they had about $2,000 monthly for everything else. The days of country clubs and designer shopping were over. Marcus got a job at a marketing agency. Entry-level, $48,000 per year. He moved into a studio apartment in Stamford. The monthly payments started arriving like clockwork. From Mom and Dad, $2,000 monthly. From Marcus, $1,230 monthly. Total, $3,230 monthly toward the $638,000 they'd stolen. At that rate, they'd be paying me back for the next 16 years. I sold the Greenwich house for $695,000. After paying off the mortgage and closing costs, I netted $348,000. Applied to the debt, the remaining balance was $290,000. Still 16 years of payments. 3 months after Sunday dinner, I received a letter. All 3 of them had signed it. Dad's handwriting, Mom's addendum, Marcus's note at the bottom. Dear Alex, we've spent 3 months in our new reality. Working full-time. Living in small apartments. Making payments on the money we stole. And we needed this time to understand what we want to say. First, you were right about everything. We invented the trust fund story because we couldn't accept that our daughter had built wealth through hard work while we spent our lives performing success we didn't have. It was easier to believe you inherited money than to acknowledge you earned it. Second, we're sorry. Not just sorry we got caught. Sorry for the theft. Sorry for the lies. Sorry for demanding you give us money from a trust fund that didn't exist while we were stealing actual money from your accounts. Third, we understand now. Working 60-hour weeks for modest salaries has taught us something we should have learned 40 years ago. Real success isn't about appearances. It's about building something sustainable. You built that. We didn't. We don't expect forgiveness. We don't expect a relationship. But we wanted you to know that we finally see what we did. And we're committed to paying back every dollar we stole, even if it takes 2 decades. We also wanted to apologize for the trust fund myth. We've told everyone in our social circle the truth. That there was no inheritance, that you built your wealth yourself, and that we stole from you. The embarrassment has been profound. But it's deserved. Thank you for not sending us to prison. Thank you for giving us a chance to make this right. We know we don't deserve it. Mom, Dad, and Marcus. I read the letter twice. Then I filed it away and went back to work. 18 months after the confrontation, my business hit $150 million in assets under management. My personal net worth reached $4.1 million. I bought a penthouse apartment in Manhattan. Not to show off. Because I wanted it and could afford it. One Saturday morning I was having coffee on my terrace when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Hello. Alex. It's Dad. Do you have a minute? What's up? I wanted to tell you something. I got promoted at work. Senior advisor. They're giving me a $15,000 raise. That's great, Dad. Yeah. It's the first time in my life I've been promoted based on actual performance instead of networking and appearances. Feels different. Good different. Weird different. Yes, good. I'm actually earning something. Silence. I also wanted to tell you that Mom and I are increasing our payment to you. With the raise, we can afford $2,400 monthly instead of $2,000. You don't have to. We want to. We want to pay you back faster. We want to do right by you. Okay. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think you'll ever forgive us? I looked out at the Manhattan skyline thinking about that question. I don't know, Dad. What you did was pretty unforgivable. 7 years of systematic theft while making me feel guilty for not sharing money you invented. That's hard to get past. I understand. But you're doing the work now. You're making payments. You told the truth to your social circle. You're actually working instead of performing. That counts for something. Can we have coffee sometime? No expectations. Just coffee. I thought about that. Maybe, I said. Let me think about it. That's fair. Take all the time you need. We hung up. A month later I texted him. Coffee this Saturday? We met at a Starbucks in Greenwich. Neutral territory. They looked different. Dad had aged but in a way that seemed more real. Less performance, more substance. Mom wore clothes from Macy's instead of Bergdorf's, and somehow looked more comfortable. Thank you for meeting us, Mom said. Thanks for suggesting it. We talked for an hour. Surface things at first. Their jobs, my business, the weather. Then deeper things. We've been going to therapy, Dad said. Both of us. Trying to understand how we got so lost. That's good. We spent our whole lives trying to look successful instead of being successful, Mom added. We taught you the wrong values. But somehow you learned the right ones anyway. I learned what not to do, I said. Watching you struggle while pretending to thrive taught me that appearance means nothing. Substance means everything. We're proud of you, Dad said. For building real success. For not compromising your values even when we pressured you. For holding us accountable even when it was hard. Thank you. We're also ashamed, Mom said quietly. Of what we did. Of who we were. We don't expect forgiveness. But we want you to know we're changing. I can see that. We finished our coffee. Before we left, I made a decision. Let's do this monthly, I said. Coffee. No business talk. No drama. Just family trying to rebuild. Both of them looked shocked. Really? Mom asked. Really? But if you ever steal from me again, if you ever lie to me again, we're done. Forever. Understood. Understood, they said in unison. They've made 18 payments now. $2,400 monthly like clockwork. Never late. Never an excuse. At our last coffee meeting, Dad told me he's saving money for the first time in his life. I have $8,000 in an emergency fund. It's not much, but it's mine. I earned it. Mom started a blog about financial recovery and second chances. I want to help other people who've made the mistakes we made. Marcus and I aren't close. We probably never will be. But he's paid every monthly installment, and he sent me a card on my birthday with a simple note. Thank you for not giving up on me. They still owe me $212,000. At current payment rates, they'll finish paying me back in 7 years. And when they do, I'm going to surprise them. Not with forgiveness. They've already earned that through consistent action. But with something else. A small gift. Maybe help with a down payment on a modest house. Maybe seed money for Mom's blog to become something more. Not because they deserve it. But because real family, The kind built on truth instead of lies. Sometimes give second chances. And sometimes those second chances actually work.